Today we are working on a 2015 Toyota Sienna, and it has a 3.5 liter V6 engine. And today we are going to be doing the front and rear brakes, rotors and pads all around. I'm going to be breaking the videos down, uh, one for the front brakes and one for the rear brakes. Hello viewers, welcome back to the channel. I'm working on a 2015 Toyota Sienna, and we are going to be doing the front brakes, rotors and pads. Uh, Initially I was talking with the customer about servicing the fronts for the longest time, and I just noticed that the pads were maybe at about at 4 millimeters. So I told the customer there's no point of servicing at 4 mil. I might as well replace everything. And because that the rotor is very rusted here, so they agreed, and so they just want to put on a new brakes. They've had this brakes for a very long time now. There's probably a little bit of a brake fade, so they want fresh pads and rotors. So we are gonna be replacing everything. I know that 4 millimeters is not safety, but depending on what the customer wants to, they want to stop the vehicle better. So they agreed for me to do the work. So anyhow, I removed the two bolts. They are 14 millimeters each for the caliper. And the first thing you want to do is to make sure that you remove any excess brake fluid from the reservoir. And if there's excess fluid, you probably want to take some fluid out before you push the pistons in, because it's going to cause the fluid to rise. So I'm looking at the level now. Seems to be okay. It's just under the max over here, so we'll see if we need to take some fluid out or not. So the first thing you want to do is to inspect the dust seal here. Make sure there's no brake fluid on the dust seal. This is a twin piston caliper, so you want to make sure there's no brake fluid that's leaking behind the dust seal, otherwise you will need to replace the caliper. And so we're going to take the old pads now. We're going to remove the spring clips for the pads here. It's hard to see on camera, but there's approximately 3 to 4 millimeters here. So anyhow, we are going to push the pistons in. You want to do this first. You want to make sure that the calipers are okay before you begin the brake job. You want to go very slowly so you don't damage anything. Sometimes it could cause problems if you push the pistons in too fast. And you want to watch out for the dust seal, so the seal doesn't turn over or get damaged. So you want to be careful. So that's in all the way now. We are going to clean the surface here later on. So I just ordered new pads and rotors. They're coming soon. So as I'm waiting for the parts to come, we're going to remove everything and clean everything up. Now I'm just going to put the caliper on the side here, or you can use like a hook tool or a coat hanger and hang it up on the strut tower here if you want. I'm just putting it on the side here so it's not resting on the brake hose. So you want to make sure these pins are moving, because if they are seized, then you might need to heat them up. to free the pins. So usually I like to do it on the vehicle if they are seized up, but they're moving, so that's fine. So there are two 17 millimeter bolts that's holding the bracket. So you can use a wrench or an impact wrench or something to remove them. I just like to use like a long wrench or breaker bar to loosen them. Then I use an impact to take them out. So I'm using the Milwaukee fuel. It's at 3/8. So we're just gonna remove the bolts now, just to speed things up a little bit. Here's the caliper. Just make sure you support it so it does not fall like how it did now. Now, if you need to, you might need to use a hammer, but the rotor is already free, so you don't need to use a hammer here. This is the rotor. So now we're just going to clean the rust on the hub and everything. And also, you probably want to check the wheel bearing, see if there's any play or any noise. I'm just going to clean the hub. So now you won't be able to clean every single speck of rust here, but you need to try your best to clean the hub. And now we're just going to clean the surface here on the caliper to get rid of any dirt, rust, and any brake dust that may be here. Being careful to not damage the boot or anything. So now we're going to take some brake cleaner and give this a quick clean. get rid of any dirt or anything. You want to make sure you get rid of any dirt or and debris, because that's a contributing factor for problems and brake noise. So now we are going to service the calipers, the caliper. Remove the clips here. Now you want to clean all of the rust here on the surface, on the contact points. You just want to make sure all the rust is cleaned out. You don't have to get it to the bare metal, but you want to make sure it's clean. So now I'm still waiting on parts. So I'm just using the orange ceramic silicone grease to lubricate the contact points and where the pads are going to seat in, the clips and the pads. I'm using the Permatex silicone ceramic brake lube. And so now we're going to service the pins here. Typically, I like to use the green silicone stuff, and then the orange stuff, I just use them on the contact points because I've had some issues with this on the pins because they tend to dry up sometimes. I'm not sure if some people have had issues themselves. Some people have had good luck with this. So, but I just use the green stuff on the pins and the orange stuff for the contact points. So I wiped everything clean here. If there is rust here, typically I like to clean the rust here, but there isn't anything there really. So anyhow, I'm going to remove this boot and clean the inside here and lubricate that. I'm using the green stuff here, the silicone stuff. I'm going to reinstall this back now. add some more of the grease. Sometimes this boot, it will get stuck, so you might need to add some more lube to get it in there. And then later you might have to remove the excess grease afterwards. In some cases, if you have issues with that boot, that small boot inside, then some guys, they discard them. But you need to make sure that you lubricate the pin well in that area where the boot goes. And I've seen on some vehicles the boot is not even there, and it doesn't really cause issues. In rare cases, it may cause noise problems, and you may need to get brand new ones. But a lot of times that sometimes that boot, it gets trapped in there, and they rip open with age and time and stuff. So it's not the end of the world. Uh, if it's giving you problems, you can just remove the boot, and that's fine. Anyhow, we are gonna do the other pin the same way. Just make sure you put the pins exactly on where they belong, because you want to keep them in the same spot, because these pins are not interchangeable. So now I'm gonna put some anti-seize lubricant. The rain has started to come back again. It's been raining for most of the morning and afternoon now. So I'm gonna put some anti-seize. I know some guys don't like to use this because it causes a gigantic mess. I know some haters are gonna hate, but there's not much you can do. So I'm gonna put some anti-seize here on the axle and everything. And you could either use this stuff or the fluid film spray, or the white lithium grease. You can use on whatever you want. So now the parts are here. Usually when you have the parts, you want to compare the parts. Make sure you have the right parts before you start the brake job. Make sure that everything is the same. Also, make sure you have the same pads as well. So now we're just going to clean the brake rotor with some brake cleaner. Usually the manufacturers of the rotors, they put some anti-rust coating on the rotors. So these rotors may contain residual oils. So you want to make sure you clean that off, because if you don't, that's going to contaminate the friction material on the brake pads. So they just do that to prevent rust when these rotors are in packaging and in shipment. So anyhow, I'm just cleaning this down. Install the rotor onto the vehicle. Now I like to use like a old axle nut or something just to hold the rotor in place, and you can use a lug nut on top of the axle nut. So you can use the lug nut here, just to temporarily hold the rotor down, so you don't have to fight with the caliper bracket and putting it on and stuff. This is just to take up the space, so you don't have to go all the way in. It's just to save time. So now I like to use the disc brake quiet to spray on the backing of the pads to prevent noise, and it also prevents caliper hopping, like excess movement of the caliper. So this is also used for problem vehicles that have the tendency to make too much brake noise or squeal. But usually the main source of brake noise is because the pads are cheap. So it's either that or something else. But typically, if you use ceramic pads, you should be okay for the most part. A majority of vehicles, they come with the ceramic pads these days. So I'm going to spray some of this stuff. This just this adds a coating onto the backing, a film on the backing. So basically, it dampens the noise. I just like to use this on every brake job, just for just because. You don't have to, but I just like to use this. So I'm gonna spray down some more, and then I will allow this to dry up for approximately 5 to 10 minutes. So now I'm ready to install the clips for the caliper bracket. Last clip here. You want to make sure that this piece is in the inside here. The same here, and the one on top, they are parallel to each other. And later, you don't want to forget the new spring clips that go on the pads. So now I'm just gonna put some lubricant here. And we are ready to install this onto the vehicle. So I cleaned the rust on the caliper bolts, the majority of the rust. We're just gonna put a little bit of anti-seize. As you can see here, this vehicle is very well maintained. So some vehicles you might not need to do as much cleaning compared to other vehicles. So depending on how bad the rust is in your area, you depending on the vehicle and maintenance, it's dependent on how much cleaning you are going to be needing on the brakes. So we're going to install the bolts now, the two 17 millimeters. I will put the torque spec on the screen somewhere if you guys want to know the torque specifications. I'm just going to zip in the bolts. I just like to use the German method, the good and tight, or nice and tight, or you can use a torque spec and tighten these down. That Milwaukee doesn't have that much power to tighten these bolts by that much, so I manually tighten them by hand afterwards, or you can use like an impact if you don't want to use them, if you don't want to tighten them by hand. Just like to make sure there's no grease or anything behind here before I install the new pads. So now we're just going to use the orange stuff here, lubricate the ears of the pads. You don't want to put too much grease. You put this on the inboard side. So I had some problems with the clips here on some of the aftermarket brake pads. You might have some issues with the clips, so you may need to play around with them in order to get them to seat in. In some cases, if the pads don't go in smoothly and freely, and then you may need to sand down a bit on the bracket again. You might have to take the bracket off and resurface the bracket again, clean more of the rust down. in order to fit the pads. Just make sure that when you put the pads in that they move freely like this. Because if the pads don't move freely, if they are stuck as you try to wiggle the pad while it's seated in, then it means there is something wrong. You want to make sure that the pads move freely. So I'm going to put the last one in, the outboard pad. The clips are a little, they are finicky on this one, so sometimes you need to play around with it to get them to go in. Just make sure that the pads move freely inside. So we're all done there. We are going to install the caliper now. Before we do that, we are going to put the spring clips in. These clips are just responsible for pushing the pads away from the rotor when the brakes are not in use, so they don't drag on the pads. So we're gonna hold the pads down as we are installing the clips, because the pads will want to move outwards. I've heard of some people using a C-clamp to hold the pads down instead of using your hands, and when you are ready to install the caliper, you can take the C-clamp off. And if you want, you can put a little bit of lubricant on these pins if you want, but you don't have to. So this is in now. So I'm holding the pads. I'm ready to install the caliper now. I want to put the caliper over here so I don't have to hold down on the pads anymore. So now I'm going to install the caliper. I lubricated it with anti-seize. I'm going to install the bolts now. We're going to tighten up the bolts now. And we'll put the torque spec on the screen. You may need to use a vice grip to tighten these up. You can see that the boot is swollen here. I'm going to talk about that in just a minute. I'm going to do the bottom. You can use a wrench or whatever to hold the pin down as you need to tighten the bolts down. So I was talking earlier, you want to get rid of the excess grease, because if you don't, it can cause an airlock inside the caliper. It will cause the vehicle to pull onto one side when you go for a road test. So I like to use something like this, or you can use a thin screwdriver to pull back on the boot. You want to get rid of the air there. You could see that the boot was expanded. There was air in there. You don't want that. You want to get rid of the excess grease. So get rid of the excess grease and do the same for the bottom as well. I like to do this on every brake job because I've had this happen to me in the past, uh, many years ago. So I learned from that. You want to make sure you squeeze the boots, make sure make sure the excess grease is is out, and you won't have any issues. So at the end of the brake job, I like to double check my work. I like to move the caliper back and forth, make sure it's moving properly on both sides here. And you want to spin the rotor, make sure the rotor is not locked up, because if anything is locked up and this is not moving, then it means that there's an issue. So make sure you double check your work, everything is tight, and also make sure that this brake hose is parallel to the caliper. You don't want this brake hose to be twisted, because if you don't see that and it's twisted and you go for a road test, it's possible to have a brake failure. So now everything is all done. There's some other work I need to do on this vehicle. We're probably going to do a brake flush later, but I'm not going to film that. It's raining and everything, and it's extremely messy here. So now I'm just going to wash down everything, clean the rotor, and remove this, and and that should be it. Just make sure that when you're done the other side and you're all finished, you put the wheels on. Make sure you top up the brake fluid if you need to, and and pump the brake pedal several times or so until you have a firm brake pedal before you take off. Otherwise, you're not going to have any brakes. So I'm just going to remove this. I'll wash down the area with brake cleaner. Wash that down and put a little bit of anti-seize here, and you should be all good to go.